audience. Yes, sir, right in the middle.
Do you think that after, this I guess really Republican, that after, I guess, almost a half millennia of, I guess, slavery and political subjugation on African Americans by the hands of whites, that after that half millennia that whites and blacks are on an equal playing field in this country?
I agree. If I didn't make that clear, then that's my fault. The playing field is not equal. I concede that. And we need to make the playing field equal. But my position is that to make that playing field equal, you start at the playing field, not the scoreboard. You start going into the places where these people are plagued with these problems. My opponent said poverty, education. You try to fix those things first. You start from the bottom up. You don't treat the symptoms, you treat what causes them.
Yes, in the back.
Gotcha. This is for the Republican again. Hate to use the cliche, but you keep talking about wanting to even the playing field, specifically education, but you attacked affirmative action with respect to college acceptance earlier. So, don't you think that's a contradiction?
No, because when I was referring to education, I was talking about early education, the education that you need to get into college. Because when you're talking about college admissions, it's based on the education you have. If you don't have the same education, the same quality of education, then you're at a disadvantage, or you may not have the same opportunities. Affirmative action seeks to try to remedy that by saying, okay, you had this disadvantage because of your lack of quality of education. We're going to give you certain preferential treatment in the admissions process. So no, I don't think there's a contradiction.
Okay, yeah, sir, right down here.
This is for the representative. You keep on talking about racial affirmative action. Now, I mean, let's say a white male from the same neighborhood as a black male tries to apply, they have the same scores and everything, but the black male can get in simply because he is black. Now, I'm one of those overrepresented minorities, so I don't get anything out of it. Like my dad applied to tons and tons of residency programs here in America before he actually got one. So my question is, like, why not apply it to such as like poverty kind of thing, like someone who's poor? Why not give them affirmative action? Because obviously someone who's richer and you might get the same amount of preference as.
I think it's a very fair question, and my response to it is simply this. You know, I've already harped on the fact that poverty, lack of education, lack of money, lack of resources disproportionately plagues communities of minorities. African Americans, single mothers, things of that nature. Now, in reference to your question, I think that when colleges or other institutions implement affirmative action programs, it is not only looked at simply your race or your gender or your minority status. You know, it is looked at your background, where you're from. That's an impact as well. Now, we're not going to be taking, you know, Carlton from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and giving him the sense of affirmative action that we're giving someone from a destitute community in, say, Harlem, New York, the slums. You know, I think people are not, you know, blindly just looking at the race card here. But like I said, the most important keystone and cornerstone to this argument here is that disproportionately impacted by these economic problems are people from low-income communities of these minority racial backgrounds and minority backgrounds in general. Now, you know, my opponent says we should target what causes this problem. Now, our society and our government, you know, the last 8 years have proven more than anything that we are a society dominated by the political elites and the economic elites. Now, if we attack these programs, we cannot rely on people providing aid to people that they have been cozied up to by. We have to attack systemically the root of this problem, and that is the fact that these people do not have opportunity because of conditions that haunt them at birth. You know, we cannot rely on the government of political elites to allocate these funds and these resources. We need to attack the problem before it becomes the government's business to deal with.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
My name is Darren Mills. I graduated in 2007. And I was I'm from
We expect a very high quality question.
I'm from East Palo Alto, California, the murder capital. Crack infested. I mean, I've been shot at my house, like in my house. So, but look, at some point you have to address the lack of cultural capital that's missing, not only from people who don't have money, but from people who just don't have that experience. So, me, when I came to college, I didn't know everything that, you know, a lot of other kids did. I didn't know about Well, about Red Hot Chili Peppers. No, I'm a DJ. Jesus, like, you know, I'm DJ. Like, I don't know about it. So, not being comfortable to integrate with certain people makes you apprehensive. And that not only affects you when you talk to people, it affects your learning ability. Not to say that I'm not as smart as other people. I've tried just as hard as everyone else to get to where I am, and that's where I am now. But I think there's a cultural capital that's absent that you have to address. And I agree with you. It doesn't all come from top to bottom, but I agree with you also on the point that you need that basis there. The real question is, how long does this last? We know that it has to be here. How long does it last? When does it cap off? Does it cap off after people like me, my generation, have, you can say I benefited off it. I thought I had great grades coming into Emory, but if I benefited off it, oh well. Like, I'm here, and I'm doing great, and I'm giving back to my community, which is what I'm supposed to do. How long does it last? And the second question is, how do you address that cultural capital that's missing? Because I'm not going to discount your example about the NBA. I mean, that's a hoop, and that's pavement. It doesn't match up to what education is systemic. So how do you address those?
I would say that, that's a terrific question in the sense that I think both of you can comment on it. So why don't we conclude with each of you giving about a minute or so response to TJ's question. And you go, the Republicans go first, and you get to conclude.
Well, I think one of the things that I would stand for and that I've been trying to push with this issue is that we would try to go in, the idea is that you want to go to places such as the ones where you grew up in and try to prevent those kinds of things from happening. Try to clean up those cities and give them more resources and give them access to those resources so that that gap slowly becomes smaller. And now I understand there's a cultural gap and there's something about cultural capital that's missing. The problem that I see with that is that that's hard to measure. You can never really tell what that is. And because of that, it's hard to institute public policy to do that. And you make a fair point kind of with your question, where does it end if you do institute some sort of policy? Because you can never measure. So I think what we need to do is go and clean up the cities, attack the real problem like education, resources, poverty, and that'll bring the gap closer and closer to where hopefully there won't be a gap.
That's for your concluding remark.
Sure. I think in our society, since the era of Jim Crow, the era of Reconstruction, the era when whites wanted to commit redemption for the acts of Reconstruction, I think we've made progress. April 15th, 1947, we had an African-American play on a white Major League Baseball team for the first time with Jackie Robinson. We had the 1957 Civil Rights Act, which is a very watered-down version of what President Eisenhower wanted to have enacted. We had the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which was a major victory during the Johnson administration. I think when we had Barack Obama elected president, this is not a culmination. The disproportionate impact that these systemic societal problems have on minority communities will not end, in my opinion, and that's very unfortunate. But what I'm saying is, I am a full believer in economic aid, working to build communities, working to provide, educational programs, brotherhood programs, things of that nature. But at the same time, I think the affirmative action program of leveling the playing field is absolutely necessary because that seed in one's mind, when we learn about history, that African Americans were thought of to be inferior at one point in history, or minorities didn't enjoy the same rights. As much as we want to learn from history and right those wrongs, the fact that all this is in the minds of our youngsters, we're not going to stop the teaching of history, the teaching of culture. These things are part of our society for better or worse long term, and I think public policy of this nature to combat those injustices is absolutely crucial. Thank you very much.
And we should thank these speakers and all of the participants tonight for a very thoughtful debate.